What's up guys, today's video is going to be a discussion video on Void in general and what we can learn from Valhalla that might help us in the new set coming out for the Alice cluster for stuff like how crazy Bahamut burn has been and everything like that. I'm not going to really focus on anything too specific. I'm just going to show off a couple of Valhalla cards and then maybe talk about the Void Regalia a bit because that is something we know at least a little about. I'm not sure if we have the exact full effect, but we do have a lot of good information on it. So to start off with the Valhalla cards, Bind Trap is one of the cards in Valhalla. It's a 2-cost Void and it's a standby. It says when a J-Ruler attacked, that's the trigger. Battle damage dealt by that J-Ruler becomes 0 until the end phase. So of course a card like this for this cost is really slow. Excuse me. But you can argue that in a deck like Kaguya where she can play this for 1, cards like this wouldn't be too bad to have. I mean, there is a card in Valhalla that I actually didn't pull off to prepare, but it's essentially Cake Zone and Zeke's, and it's the same cost, 1 green, 1 colorless for the Cake Zone, and 2 green for the Zeke's, and their only effects is to counter a spell and summon. And then if you look at Zeke's and Cake Zone, they're kind of like power creep versions of it. We get to draw a card if you control Hansel or Gretel, and you get to do the other 3 effects that Zeke's has. So it's not to say that a card like this can't exist in Alice Cluster and then be like super good where it's like deal battle damage becomes 0 and then flip them back to their ruler side, something crazy, or maybe because it's a standby, you know, it should be punishing. Our standbys right now are really underwhelming, and it's nice to know that, you know. And then at the same time, because it's a standby, imagine you just setting something and them trying to attack with Bahamut and they're just like, if they know about that card's existence and they're just like, wow, that could technically be a total bluff, or it could just ruin my entire first turn play. So I like the thought that, you know, there's a ton of cards coming out, well, not coming out, but we even have 1 or 2 here and there that destroy standby area cards like Emissary. If you want to play a deck that, you know, utilizes your J-Ruler with all the new Regalias coming out and stuff, you should have to go through these standbys and destroy them to try to get some damage in, or you need to be able to invest in more than just paying the color cost to J-Activate, I feel. And if you really want to play a deck that has to do with, you know, your J-Ruler being your main creature and your whole deck revolves around it, then your whole deck should revolve around making sure that that J-Ruler not only stays alive but can get its damage in. So I like the idea of thinking that there could be punishing standbys coming out for J-Rulers, and we already have answers to stuff like destroying cards in standby areas, or we can of course get more cards that destroy cards in standby areas. So I think in general it's really cool. I mean, green can even use Cake Zone, but yeah, I think it's really cool to think that cards like this could exist and be super power creeped, and then you actually have to play around those type of cards instead of just going swing for Bahamut because I'm flying and you can't do anything about it. And I mean, mostly for even other rulers that don't have flying. I mean, a ruler like Kane can attack, they declare block, and unless it's like a Cheshire, you just blow it up and the damage goes through. So it's nice to know that cards like that could exist. And then the next one I'm going to talk about is Second Chance. Second Chance says target cancel. Sorry guys. Cancel target judgment. Your opponent cannot do judgment again this turn. The cost paid for the judgment is returned as though it was not paid. So essentially, this card's really slow. I mean, I wouldn't pay 3 to do this because they just get their mana back. But once again, we can get a power creep version of this where, you know, it might cost 2 or 3, but it says cancel target J-Activate, draw a card. Just like Glimpse of Kaguya, but, you know, with having the actual cancel on date J-Activate. And that would be great because you can argue that a card like that could be too strong, but I mean, there's counters for it. It wouldn't technically be main decked unless like Grim and Vlad really weren't being played, because then you have a dead card against those kind of decks. And I think it's just really cool to think that, you know, you can get a card that actually targets the J-Activate like system itself instead of just having to deal with the J-Ruler once it's on the field. I mean, we get to cancel activates, why can't we cancel more J-Activates like this card? So that's one of the other cards. And then Circle of Nullify. This card's really interesting too. It says as you add this, and it's an addition to rulers or J-Rulers. Choose an ability of the ruler. That ruler loses that ability. You cannot choose J-Activate with this. So although you can't stop resonators from J-Activating, you can cancel an ability. And then the other continuous is as you add this, choose an ability of the J-Ruler. That ruler loses this ability. Sorry, the Valhalla cards are translated like really hard to read, and the English is kind of broken. But yeah, so you either pick a J-Ruler and negate one of the effects, or you choose a ruler and negate one of the effects. But I mean, there's a lot of addition hate right now, and I mean an insane amount of addition hate. You have Holy Beast, which recently came out, which can even work through like Abdul. You have cards like Dream of Juliet. There's a bunch of light cards like Holy Grail even that destroy additions. So if you're playing Grim, and this could be a side deck card against something like Grim, and I can just negate your ability to play Fairy Tales or every color, you should have to invest in getting rid of this card. I mean, you have an effect that's completely continuous that I can't do anything about, and you can just play it as if, you know, because it's your ruler. And of course, it does seem really punishing on something like Grim, but like I said, like, additions should be relevant in the meta, and we should be using addition hate in order to get rid of stuff like this, because what's the point of having additions if 99% of the meta is not going to use any, and then all the addition hate doesn't even matter? I feel like I could be totally cool with having to go, oh, there's really good additions in the game. 4 of the cards in my deck should be addition hate. Oh, there's a lot of maybe a deck that revolves around summoning a lot from the graveyard. I should side in some more fetal movements, or, you know, something that might shuffle their deck, shuffle their graveyard like Zeke's. And I just like to think that the whole game, in my opinion, shouldn't just be people, you know, attacking each other nonstop and then siding in just in case you're playing against a rogue deck, because that's actually what it really feels like at the moment. I'd rather it be every deck has the capability to have all these great additions that are just like staples in the actual meta itself, and then you're forced to run addition hate and maybe specific monster removal, or, you know, like there's just a lot of cards that seem like a lot of side deck cards, and I think it would be really cool if we had just kind of like a main deck answer to everything and we played with every kind of card type. I think that would be really interesting. I mean, who's to say, like, if you're playing Musketeers, you're obviously going to be playing more additions than most players anyway, so it's not like it takes away from those special decks either. Next up, there's Gimmick Mimic. Gimmick Mimic says, as long as you control this card in your field, rulers cannot do judgment. So once again, of course, at a 4 cost with 2/2, this is completely awful. But once again, we can get like a power keep version of it. If this card was to be like a 5/5 for like a 3 cost, or maybe a 2 cost with like 4/4 or something like that, and you can have multiple copies on board, it's not bad. I mean, it's not going to totally shut down the deck, because once again, like, you might have to have like Realm of Pure Spirits with this to really lock them down. But I like the idea of Void being this anti-judgment deck, and just like stopping your opponent from doing judgment, because like we should have that ability in the deck, I feel like. I mean, it doesn't have to be some, like, it wouldn't technically be like super anti-meta and nobody would be able to play the game. It's just nice to know that you have the variety of choosing that as an option if you wanted to. If that's a playstyle you want to do, it is something you should be able to. And I mean, once again, with the cards like the Circle of Nullify that can stop cards like Grim, you can technically main deck an entire deck like this, and then if you do go against Grim, you have answers to that kind of deck too. So it's not like, oh, if you get paired up with Vlad or Grim, you're gonna lose. I mean, who's to say that the power creep version of this card wouldn't just say your opponent cannot do judgment, so you can still be swinging at Grim with your the new Void ruler or anything like that. So cards like this generally I feel like are really, really interesting, and I like to see more cards like this, because I like the option of being able to stop a judgment, or the option of you know, preventing a J ruler from doing something, opposed to them just being, once they're out, you just have to like group flame them and then they're gone. And then so the next card is Time of Ragnarok. This card isn't really like an anti ruler card. It kind of is, I guess, because I'll explain, but it says play this if there are no J rulers in any fields. Destroy all resonators. Recover all rulers, and both players do judgment without paying the judgment cost. If a ruler cannot do judgment, destroy it. So of course the new version of this card would have to have the astral rulings, because essentially what this card would do is, if you kill their ruler once and you try to play this, because they can't do judgment, because they've already died, they would just be sent to the graveyard and they can't tap for mana anymore. Or against Grim, like, I know this is 7 cost, of course, you're not going to get there until Grim has at least like 4 to 5 stones, unless you're playing like some crazy ramp deck. But if you were to use this on Grim, you J ruler your, like, let's say Bahamut, and then their Grim would just be sent to the graveyard and they can't tap for stones anymore. So I wouldn't technically want a card that sends your ruler to the graveyard, because that's insane to me. I mean, I never think you shouldn't be able to tap for mana, because that seems annoying, and it just, I don't like cards that just don't let you play the game. It's fine to have cards that maybe stop a certain method you might have, but like I said, your deck should have additions and all these different methods to go for. So if they lock down one, you can still answer to that lockdown with the other cards and then keep going. But a card like this to just blankly kill Grim would just suck. But In general, I think it's nice to think that there is a card that force deactivates. I mean, it's kind of like I remember there was like this Yu-Gi-Oh card. I don't remember the name exactly. I think it was like the last churn or something, and you would vote summon a monster from your deck, and whoever had like the strongest one would win. Something crazy like that. But yeah, like in general, this card seems really cool to me. I like to think that you can top deck this and just be like, all right, let's do this, like last draw, and then your J rulers go at it, and whoever wins wins. But I don't know. So yeah, a power creep version of this card maybe could be good. It might just say like, flip both your J rulers and do battle, and then it would return them as an Astral ruler, and at least you get rid of their J ruler. So that's an option too. And that was the last Valhalla card I found that I think would be really good. And then the final card to talk about is just the Void Regalia. Of course, we don't have the Art Force. I'm going to be just using this. This was a Cottage of Cakes, so I'm going to start a Kickstarter to fund my new Cottage of Cakes. That's just sad. It had to be destroyed for this purpose, but yeah, make sure to check the link. I'm just kidding. I'm not really starting a Kickstarter for it, but yeah, so the Void Regalia, from what we know from what Matt has said, it's pay 5 to become a Resonator with 10/10, which is of course 1,000,000. You can pay 3 instead if you have the Void Ruler as your ruler. It can pay 1 and tap to destroy another Regalia, and I think that's all we know for now. We don't know if it sacks for Imperishable, which I feel like it should because all the other ones that we have now do. We don't know if it has like First Strike or a symbol skill on it, I should say. So we don't know if it has any symbol skills. We don't know if it has any other effect. We don't know if it only destroys Regalias and becomes a Resonator. And we don't know if the ruler itself has like a god art and it's like, tap to make it cost 2 less or whatever. So there is a lot of things that we still don't know about the Void Ruler. The Void Regalia, and I don't know if there's any more to it than just destroying Regalias, because my thing that I like about the idea of having that as a Void Ruler is because, Void Regalia is, in decks like Lumia, I don't like to use Excalibur or Leviathan, because I feel as though I'd rather just focus on her being on the field and making me plus, rather than trying to get some damage in with her. Just with rulers like Lumia, it doesn't seem so important to do so. I just like being able to have the blanket plus effect off of her. So it's cool to think that, with the rulers that I want to make my deck around, where I want them to be attacking and getting that damage and stuff like Melgus or Faria, or like Bahamut and stuff as well, that you could use these Regalias that are like Leviathan and Excalibur to get some damage in. And then the rulers like Grim and Vlad and maybe Lumia or other rulers that you don't technically want to be swinging in because their effects themselves are just enough to, answer to stuff, just like, have removal and stuff. Because like I said, Lumia plus 3s, and if you hit like a flame, it's like, oh, now I can flame something. If you hit a stoning to death, you can stoning to death something. So for those kind of rulers, it's cool to know that you could just use the Void Regalia, so you're not really, it's not like everyone's using Regalias and you can't, kind of like how it felt to play Vlad and Grim now. It was kind of like, yeah, of course, like you have different win conditions, but you kind of miss out on a whole new function of the game, and that kind of sucks. So now it's nice to know that you can kind of have like an anti-Regalia, and even with Lumia, let's say if you can go, use the Void Regalia and then destroy Regalia, and then maybe they destroy your Regalia, or you sack it for Imperishable if it can do that. And then you use it again with Necronomicon, and then it gets banished when it's destroyed again, and then you bring it back with her effect, and you just have like this endless destruction of Regalias and Imperishable or something. So that would be really cool to see. There's just so much that these Regalias can bring to the table. Like I said, if it doesn't give you Imperishable, maybe you can sack it to do something even crazier, who knows. But yeah, so let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I didn't really know how far this video was going to stretch. I'm glad to have done it though, because I kind of want to give a lot of players hope. I feel like a lot of people are just like, no, nothing can beat Bahamut and there is nothing we can do. But by the way, Matt already confirmed there's actually a 2-card combo you can do to permanently kill Bahamut in the new set on turn 1. So that's really good to know too. It's just nice to know. That does sound a bit scary because I wouldn't want all of my other J rulers to die that easily. But maybe it's going to be, you're just not going to be J-activating as early as you would think, and maybe you would want to set up as every deck first and not just blankly, like I said, just swing, 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 swing. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm always wanting to know what your discussion is. Maybe you can challenge some of my ideas and think why these cards wouldn't be fast enough, or why they wouldn't work, or why power creeping some of those old Valhalla cards might be a bad reason. And if you guys haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do, because I have all of CMF rulers coming for the next 2 weeks, and the Too Long Didn't Watch version of all of those as well. And then of course everything coming with Alice Cluster. I'll be doing coverage on all of that as well. And I'll catch you guys next time.